What does justice require? What does society owe someone just because they're a human being? Well, good morning and happy Tuesday. And I just want to tell you, these are the kinds of questions which orient our culture's discussion around justice. They are good questions, worthy of reflection. A similarly good question was asked towards Jesus once. Who is my neighbor? Jesus had initially told this man that inheriting eternal life requires loving God completely and loving your neighbor as yourself. The natural question is, then, who is my neighbor? Jesus responds with a parable, and we've heard this story, many of us. A man gets beaten on the side of a road. A priest walks by, doesn't come over and doesn't help. A Levite then walks by, doesn't come over and doesn't help. Finally, a Samaritan walks by and takes pity on the beaten man. He bandages his wounds, pours oil and wine on them. He then puts the man on his own donkey, brings him to an inn, takes care of him, all on his own dime. Jesus tells the story, then looks at the lawyer, and he asks this: who was a neighbor in this story? It was only recently when I noticed that Jesus never actually answers this guy's question. Jesus doesn't lay out the specifications for who deserves justice and the kind of justice they deserve. A lot of the questions you'd think Jesus would want to give answers to. All he does is reorient the question first at the man and then at us. Jesus wants us to consider, are we living just lives? But what does that even mean? St. Augustine, 4 centuries after Jesus, argued that justice is really about love. Justice is about loving the appropriate things in the appropriate ways, says Augustine. Augustine would say that to rescind love from God is unjust because God, just as God, is supremely worthy of our love. Simple enough, but where Augustine hits home is his insights about how the love of glory, the love of money, the love of honor is both unjust and the root of injustice in our society. In his classic book, The City of God, Augustine argues that Rome's injustice was a result of improper loves. Because Roman citizens loved temporal things like glory and empire more than God, their society devolved into violence. Individual Roman soldiers did not care for the reasons for war. They just liked the glory from battle winning. Roman armies didn't care about the kinds of people they subjected. They didn't care about the sexual violence and murder that they perpetuated. They just cared about expanding borders. They cared about empire. In profiling Rome, Augustine shows us that justice is really about love, loving the right things to the right degree. When we subordinate the love of God and the love of the creatures made in his image to the love of money, to the love of honor and empire, society goes wrong. And so we return to the original question. What does justice require? Simply this: justice requires loving the right things to the right degree. It requires a love towards God, a love towards neighbor, and even the kind of love which lends a hand to a man stripped on the side of the road, and even a man whom you might not like. And we as Christians, we know this even more because our God's great act of justice was one perfectly in sync with love. The cross is both an emblem of justice and a symbol of love. Jesus takes upon himself what all humanity deserves, and that's just. And he does it willingly with his love. So the question we as Christians must answer is this: do we love the right things in the right ways? Are we loving things and money and power and other things more than God and our neighbor? We really need to examine these questions, and I encourage you to do so this morning. Thank you.